The Star of Kazan by Ibbotson. This book is so fantastic, and I mean that in various ways, that I had gotten a very long way into the book before I realized this isn't fantasy. This is actually just straight out fiction, but it's so fantastic that I was reading it as though it was. It stimulated the senses in many ways. It's a wonderful book. And I will just read a little bit from the beginning. Where are we? Okay. Chapter 1. A Person is Found. Ellie had gone into the church because of her feet. This is not the best reason for entering a church, but Ellie was plump and middle-aged, and her feet were hurting her. They were hurting her badly. It was a beautiful sunny day in June, and Ellie and her friend Sigrid, who was as thin as Ellie was portly, had set out early from Vienna in the little train which took them to the mountains, so that they could climb up to the top of a peak called the Dorfelspitze. They went to the mountains on the last Sunday of every month, which was their day off, changing their aprons for dirndls and filling their rucksacks with salami sandwiches and slices of plum cake, so that when they got to the top, they could admire the view without getting hungry. It was how they refreshed their souls after the hard work they did all week, cleaning and cooking and shopping and scrubbing for the professors who employed them and who were fussy about how things were done. Ellie was the cook, and Sigrid was the housemaid, and they had been friends for many years. But on this particular Sunday, Ellie was wearing new boots, which is a silly thing to do when you are going on a long excursion. They were about halfway up the mountain when they came to a flower-filled meadow, and on the far side of it, standing quite by itself, a small white church with an onion dome. Ellie stopped. "You know, Sigrid, I think I'd like to say a prayer for my mother. I had a dream about her last night. Why don't you go on, and I'll catch you up?" Sigrid snorted. "I told you not to wear new boots." But she agreed to go ahead slowly, and Ellie crossed the wooden bridge over a little stream and went into the church. It was a lovely church, one of those places which look as though God might be about to give a marvelous party. There was a painted ceiling full of angels and golden stars, and a picture of St. Ursula holding out her arms, which made Ellie's feet feel better straight away. The holy relic wasn't something worrying like a toe bone or a withered hand, but a lock of the saint's hair in a glass dome decorated with pearls. And though the church stood all by itself away from the village, someone had put a bunch of fresh alpenroses in a vase at the Virgin's feet. Ellie slipped into a pew and loosened her shoelaces. She said a prayer for her mother, who had passed on many years ago, and closed her eyes. She only slept for a few minutes. When she awoke, the church was still empty, but she thought she had been woken by a noise of some sort. She looked round carefully, but she could find nothing. Then, peering over the edge of the pew, she saw, lying on the crimson carpet at the foot of the altar steps, a parcel. It was about the size of a vegetable marrow, quite a large one, and Ellie's first thought was that someone had left it there as a harvest offering. But harvest festivals happen in September, not in June, and now, to Ellie's amazement, the marrow made a noise, a small mewing noise. A kitten? A puppy? Ellie did up her shoelaces and went over to look. But it was worse than a kitten or a puppy. "Oh, dear," said Ellie. "Oh, dear, dear, dear." Sigrid had reached the top of the mountain. She had admired the view, she had eaten a salami sandwich, and she had breathed deeply several times. But there was still no sign of Ellie. Sigrid was annoyed. When you are on top of a mountain admiring a view, you want somebody to do it with. She waited a little while longer, then she packed the rucksack and made her way back down the rocky slope through the pine woods till she came to the meadow with the little church. Ellie was still inside, sitting in the front pew, but she was holding something, and she looked bewildered and flushed and strange. "Someone left this," she said. Ellie pushed back the edge of the shawl, and Sigrid bent down to look. Good heavens! The baby was very, very young, not more than a few days old, but it was, quite amazingly, alive. Warmth came from it. It steamed like a fresh-baked loaf. Its legs worked under the shawl, and when Sigrid stretched out a bony forefinger to touch its cheek, it opened its eyes, and there, gazing up at them, was a person. There was a note pinned to her shawl, said Ellie. On a piece of paper, smudged with tears, were the words, "Please be good to my little daughter, and take her to Vienna to the nuns." "What are we going to do?" asked Sigrid. She was upset. Neither she nor Ellie was married. They knew nothing about babies. "Take her to Vienna to the nuns, like it says in the notes. What else can we do?" It took them an hour to carry the baby down to the little village of Pettelsdorf. No one there knew anything about a baby. No one had seen anyone go. Bleh. It took them an hour to carry the baby down to the little village of Pettelsdorf. No one there knew anything about a baby. No one had seen anyone go into the church. "She'll have come up from the other side, over the pass," they said. A peasant woman gave them a bottle and some diluted milk from her cow, and they trudged on to the small lakeside station to wait for the train back to Vienna. It was late by the time they arrived in the city with their damp and fretful bundle, and they were very tired. The only convent that they knew of which took in foundlings was a long way from the house of the professors, where they lived and worked, and they didn't have the money for a cab. So they took the tram, and though it was one of the new electric ones, it was almost dark as they walked up the drive to the convent of the Sacred Heart. The wrought iron gates were shut. From the low white building came the sound of singing. "She'll be all right in there," said Ellie, touching the baby's head. Sigrid pulled the bell rope. They heard the bell pealing inside, but nobody came. She pulled it again, and they waited. Then at last an elderly nun came hurrying across the courtyard. "What is it?" she asked, peering into the dusk. "We've brought you a foundling, sister," said Sigrid. "She was left in a church in the mountains." "No, no, no!" The nun threw up her hands. She seemed to be horrified. "Take her away. Don't stay for a minute. You shouldn't have come. We're in quarantine for typhus. Three of the sisters have got it, and it's spreading to the children." Typhus? Ellie shivered. It was a terrible disease. Everyone knew that. "Take her away, quickly, quickly," said the nun, and she began to flap with her arms as though she were shooing away geese. "But where can we take her?" began Sigrid. "There must be somewhere else." "No one in Vienna will take in children while the epidemic lasts," she said. "It'll be 6 weeks at least." Left outside, the friends stared at each other. "We'll have to take her back with us and try again tomorrow." "What will the professors say?" "They needn't know," said Ellie. "We'll keep her below stairs. They never come down to the kitchen." But there she was wrong.